After securing political power in the United States after the presidential election, in a shocking turn of events, billionaires have decided to side with other billionaires. Oh no! Anyway, I've taken the black pill on politics in the last month. Why? Well, no matter what we do or say, politicians will always spew more fecal matter from their mouths than their own behinds. All of those promised ideas they served up on the podium disappear like popcorn at a movie theater. Buttery, enticing, but ultimately just empty carbs. To address the elephant in the room, while he's often a pretty polarizing figure, the legendary and most polite Sam Hyde recently holed himself up in a concrete warehouse to tear into Elon Musk. This video that looks like a scene straight out of Reservoir Dogs really calls into question Elon's motives, because after a year of him being an internet troll appealing to dejected, non-college educated American youth with memes and attempts to participate in pop culture, he had a bit of a mask off moment. Or should I say, Musk off moment. At least, according to Hyde, where in a tweet he's admittedly still in favor on bringing in legal immigrants to search for new talent, insinuating that homegrown American workers are still in competition with people abroad. Good God, who would have thought? A billionaire wanting access to cheaper labor to save a quick buck? Jesus, and I skip breakfast every day just to save money. To be honest with you guys, I don't think they care. They're gonna do what they want. The entire reason I even got lumped into politics in the first place is less because I want to war against people for a specific cause, but to keep up with the happenings of the world. I found recently that beyond keeping yourself informed, politics is pretty much not worth it if you want to enjoy your life. It's better to touch grass and develop what little social skills you have left after our unironic arrested development from COVID. But the way Elon's framing it is a cop-out. More immigration or collapse is the same lazy fear-mongering we've been spoon-fed for decades.
Either you are with us, or you are with the terrorists.
Blah, 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 blah. Okay, man. If you're importing people to fill gaps in a broken system without addressing why those gaps exist in the first place, you're not fixing anything. You're outsourcing the problem. But the other thing is that the US education system doesn't even adequately prepare American workers for these high-tech jobs in the first place. I'm over it, man. It's not gonna change. Like Sam Hyde said, 30 years ago our economic rival was Japan. Now the boogeyman is China. There's always something they hold over our heads to keep us working. And then they use politics as entertainment to make it seem like things are actually happening. But here's the thing, nothing ever happens. I have a friend who once said America is just like a glorified third world country, full of many people who are way too proud of how terrible its infrastructure is, simply because it's American. But Sam Hyde's right. There are millions of people living with their parents who are more than capable of doing great things. A lot of my friends are in the same situation, stuck in a rut with no motivation because they've sent out hundreds, if not thousands of resumes, only to get pretty much a fuck-all response in return. I just feel bad for all those kids who probably got degrees in computer science, but are now working at pizza joints because, for whatever reason, no one hired them. And then you have the population problem. I mean, look man, who in the right mind would want a kid when they can't afford to live on their own? Think about it. If you're making $3,000 a month, a third goes to rent, a third to food, and the last third could be your so-called savings, but it usually gets eaten up by random bills that come in throughout the month. You should try investing. And you should try considering making life livable for those who aren't as obsessed with material wealth. Life, money isn't the goal. Since Sam went on about how Elon betrayed the MAGA trust, he got me thinking that hoping for politicians and big names to change is like trying to grill a steak with a flashlight. And seeing Sam Hyde spit facts like this just reminds me that I shouldn't feel bad for not taking it too seriously. It's all a joke, man. Because it never fails to shock me how incompetent and glib governments around the world are. Corporations serve the government serves the corporations are treated like people, but people are... well, they're certainly not treated like people. And whether it's sensationalized or genuinely getting worse with each passing year, instead of fixating on how bad things are, I prefer to laugh it off. Fuck it. The world isn't gonna burst into flames from some nuclear war. Everything's just slowly withering away around us. Just look at how the world is now because of the permeating nihilism. A good leader would keep things clean and care about the citizens who break their backs and have their souls crushed to keep things running. Kinda like how they do here in Japan. But when I go onto the web, there will be reminders that things aren't okay and out of control. I mean, for example, have you seen footage of England lately? Sheffield and Birmingham, anyone? I could chalk it up to media sensationalism, but after I managed to scrape together enough money to visit France last year, I had to make a brief stop in Paris, right? So I got off the plane and hopped on the RER Express train from Charles de Gaulle Airport to the city center. And on top of the subway's interior lights flickering and looking like they hadn't been managed in over 10 years, every subway car I rode, I couldn't help but notice something. I wasn't hearing French. But Arabic, I don't know, man. If I came to Japan and all of a sudden everyone around me was speaking Russian, I'd be a little confused too. But I'll keep it positive. Without a doubt, the highlight of my time in France, and by extension the highlight of what a good life experience should be, was visiting Angoulême in the south of France and forgetting about all politics and taking in the nature around me. That's the Tantris pill. Take the black pill and down it with some Earl Grey and a little milk, just to watch some good scenery and forget it all. A friend of mine lives in the countryside nearby the town center, and I could still remember how I felt during the long sunset looking over the lush green hills, which seemed to stretch on forever, an endless glow that washed over everything, even my sorrow. Some of the architecture in that town was pretty damn old, yet still charming, and most of the people around there had limited internet, choosing instead to live off the land, raising their own livestock, growing their own vegetables, and eating seafood. And in the city centers where most of us live, culture and shared connection ultimately don't matter because they play no economic role. If you can work, that's good enough for them. But honestly, that might not even be the case because no one's hiring, and recruiters are evil. This kind of nihilism from those at the top has seeped into every country in the Western world, and the filth on the streets and the tensions from cultural differences are a direct result of apathy in favor of money. It's blinded us to the need of community, but I don't think that's going to change. I truly believe that economic materialism is what's making everything uglier, because at its core, materialism is all about money, the very essence of it, the thing that breeds it all evil. The wealthy hoard it and live in their beautiful homes far away from the immigration policies they support, while leaving the rest of the world cheap and run down, a consequence of poor wealth distribution.
Security is precisely what inhabitants in gated communities are looking for. Norman and Courtney are no exception.
Living in a gated community is of high priority in our lives.
And we're not interested in looking at houses outside of a community.
No.
Sure, some of these depressing skyscrapers may not be cheap to construct, but anything beautiful or artistic is usually designed to cater to the individual's needs in a capitalist system, but only those who can afford it. Public spaces don't need to be beautiful anymore, they just need to be functional, and they're hardly that in some cities I've seen. As long as things work just enough to keep the economy ticking, who cares about the state of public infrastructure? So to get my mind off this shit, I recently started a YouTube channel as a reminder to myself, creating just for the sake of it. I just enjoy grabbing my camera and sharing my life with others in a purely authentic sense, a feeling that money can't buy. And the only reason I even think about money at all is to make sure I don't go hungry and have a roof over my head. But beyond that, everywhere I go, the world just feels like a small village to me. Japan's a bit different, I suppose, but even here I see the same stores from America, France, Canada, and England. The irony of caring so much about the economy is that you and I both know that Americans are poor compared to the past. Newsflash, Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Did you roll your eyes? I did. We all know. I'm starting to feel like it's almost pointless to keep talking about it because nothing ever changes. You've seen Art Chad talk about it. You've seen Moon talk about it. You've seen What If Alt Hiss mention it. Also, seriously, don't do ayahuasca if you can avoid it. But I'm sure you've all seen that video by Luke Smith where he suggests that the economy is essentially fake. Take COVID as an example, with non-essential workers. Everything more or less kept running when the rest of us got $1,000 in the mail, while everything else sorted itself out. In the end, we still had to get back to work, but considering how complex our society is, and I'm not eager to hand out compliments here, not every single person needs a 40-hour work week to make this whole thing function. Oh, but the economy, oh no! What will we do if the stock markets crash? What will we do if Apple stocks take a dive? Lose money? What money? We don't have money. It's just this monstrous thing that turns cultural aspects into obstacles for companies to overcome so they can open more markets, secure more labor, and keep expanding, like some perfect anti-fragile system. Sam Hyde made a pretty solid point about this in the video. Healthy functioning societies need more than gadgets. They need a shared ideology, heritage, history, beliefs, values, or religion. Otherwise, they collapse and they crumble. The depressing thing is the shared cultures we have now are whatever corners of the internet we've managed to carve out for ourselves. I know I made a video on why the right struck back, but that wasn't exactly a things are gonna get better from here on out kind of video. It was more like, nah, this is just the sentiment people had. Admittedly, I had a tiny spark of optimism for the future, since the internet felt just a little more unified at that particular moment, but if anyone in this corner of the web remembers the golden rule, nothing ever happens.